Welcome to the Disagree to Disagree podcast. Be starring myself, Brad Collins, my buddy Matt Bourne from college. He lives up in Minnesota, and we feel bad for him for that because, well, he's a lifelong Vikings fan, a Twins fan. It's just not good.
I didn't agree that you get top billing on this, Brad.
Disagree to disagree.
And we also got Tonez, the only man here who has a sandwich named after him. Tonez, how we doing?
Hey, we're doing great, my man. I still think that I still need to franchise that sandwich.
I agree.
The fact that I haven't franchised that sandwich, I'm still angry about. I'm not going to lie.
I agree.
You can make some money out of it and move out of your dorm.
Yes, this is a true statement. I'm 31. For everybody listening out there, I'm 31 years old, and I live in a dorm.
And single, ladies.
And single, ladies. I'm
And he
telling
loves
you
long
right
walks
now,
on the beach.
I'm a catch waiting to happen here. Straight up catch.
And then we also got Daryl Fischer joining us, Buccaneers fan.
Someone's got to represent them, right?
The old NFC Central.
I always think back to old Buccaneers coach John McKay when asked, I think when they were on their 28th straight loss, what do you think about your team's execution? And his reply was, I'm all for it. So, if that's not a
My
reason
favorite quote from that coach was in the middle of a game. He said, "We can't stop the run or the pass. Other than that, we're in great shape."
Great shape, guys. We're going back to the glory years, the Wayne Haddix years. That's a Super Bowl reference.
All right, so what we're going to do here on Disagree to Disagree is, well, we're just going to talk about, it's just mainly sports is what we're going to talk about here on this podcast, and we'll get off tangent and just deal with it because it'll be a lot of fun. And tonight we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, guys. I know it's a big thing for us. We love it. I always sit down and watch it. My kids watch it with me now, and I used to have draft parties, but that doesn't turn out so well anymore. So, but just glad to be talking with you guys. I haven't talked to you, Tonez and Borno. I haven't talked to you guys in a while. Back in the old Brown College days when we were rocking the parking lot, with football.
BFL football. Hall of
BFL.
Famers right here.
Yeah?
All of us are Hall of Famers.
We are. We are all Hall of Famers. My Bourne led
That's right. At a school that doesn't exist anymore, may I add.
Yeah, and Brown. Yeah, yep, exactly. And Borno was the all-time sack leader.
Oh man!
If it tells you anything, I was their prized radio student in my grade, and I work at a credit union now. So cheers.
And I work for NFHSnetwork.com.
Oh,
so,
nice.
I guess I've done okay, but not great.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the few that actually does radio. To be honest with you, I host 2 shows, and then I also do play-by-play for high school wrestling and football. So I think I'm one of the few. I honestly, from our class, from our group, I really think I'm one of the few that's still in radio.
Well,
I
good
stuck
for
with
you.
radio for 11. I stuck with radio for 11 years, and then 2 years ago I left.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean it's something to pass the time. It's a hobby. It's not a career.
It is a hobby.
That's exactly right. Why did Brown College have that as its slogan? I think they would have gotten more students. It's not a career; it's a hobby, a very expensive one.
A $37,000 hobby.
Yeah,
that's right. And the average annual salary of a radio DJ is right around $25,000. So,
wow, you made $25,000? Holy cow!
Did I
would have made that. I don't think I made that.
that was
I don't know. What was? Let's see. At my peak in radio, I think my average hourly pay was about $8.75, and I was the program director. So.
Oh man. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. That sucks.
All right, well, let's talk some football, guys. Why not?
Let's talk football.
So the NFL draft is coming upon us here, and we all got our favorite teams. We all got our favorite players that we want to see our team take. Tonez and I, big Bears fans. Borno, he's a Vikings fan, and Daryl's a Buccaneers fan. None of us Packers fans, thankfully, because we know how that can be.
Praise Jesus.
Bad.
Born, this isn't a religious one. We don't have to praise Jesus here.
Okay, praise Jeebus then, whatever.
So now we start off with the number one pick, which is crazy. I mean, I love what we saw in the last week or so, guys. Trades of picks and everything. I think it's the smartest thing to do. I think it should be done every year because the team that picks number one overall was horrible last year, and one player isn't going to do anything for them. So Tennessee decided, hey, let's just the Rams and take a lot of their picks, and we'll give them number one.
Yeah, definitely. And very shocked by it because I really don't think that Jared Goff or Carson Wentz, who everybody's kind of talking about, are going to be the number 1 and 2 overall picks. Like, I don't think either one of them are worthy of going number 1 or number 2 overall. And prior to these trades, last mock draft I read had Jalen Ramsey, the corner from Florida State, going number 1 overall. So it's insane how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
Well, you look at Los Angeles; they are the team that desperately needs some bit of hype. You know, they move away from St. Louis on bad terms out to L.A. And what better way to kind of be kind of in flux and kind of marriage their history with L.A. than getting a quarterback from Cal, and that's Jared Goff. I think it's pretty obvious that that's what they're going to take. If I were the Rams, I would take Jared Goff, no doubt. But yeah. I would definitely have my reservations on thinking that he could be an elite quarterback in the NFL.
Yep, definitely. And I like Cleveland's approach because Cleveland looked around the front office and they said, all right, guys, here's the deal. We're going to suck next year. We're going to suck the year after that. And we're probably going to suck the year after that. So one player's not going to make a difference. Let's just take our bad news and our bad nature and just sell it. Just sell it to whoever the hell wants it.
Yeah, Cleveland is 20 players away from a good team. They have Joe Hayden and Joe Thomas, and that's all they have.
Ouch. Mistake by the lake, everybody.
I think one of the things for the Rams especially is the fact that Jeff Fisher's spent so much time kind of with mediocre teams and now actually being out in L.A. where there actually will be a spotlight on him. I think that if he is able to get kind of that project quarterback where he may be able to buy himself 2 years. The thing when you look
that's a great point.
I think the other thing is with the Rams, they've kind of been building up to this point because I believe someone had said of the last 2 drafts, they've taken like 4 offensive tackles. So they're trying to kind of build that line and kind of have that set in place. Someone made an analogy and that Jeff Fisher already has kind of his Eddie George-style running back with Todd Gurley. Now, I guess they kind of get the same vibe of Steve McNair when he was in his heydays at Tennessee, and that's why they're kind of leaning towards Jared Goff with this pick.
I mean, Brad, I mean, do you see that? How do I say this? Do you see Jared Goff being a difference maker for that team, even with the line that they have, and also with Todd Gurley in the backfield?
You know, that's the thing I look at. I watch a lot of college football, and you watch Jared Goff, and everybody's just like, oh my God, he's so amazing. I didn't see it. I'm not sold on him. I'm really not sold on him. I'm more sold on Carson Wentz, to be honest with you. You want to know why? Carson Wentz wins. And winning is a huge thing when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Jared Goff played for Cal, who they didn't really win. And then in the Pac-12, in my opinion, really isn't that tough of a conference. I mean, you got Oregon. They're awesome. USC's down. UCLA isn't that good. And I don't know. I'm not sold on Jared Goff at all. I'm more sold on Carson Wentz, but I'm not sold on him either.
I'm going to disagree.
That's the conundrum, don't you think, Matty, is both of these quarterbacks, you don't really have that elite quarterback where you point and say, this is that guy. This is that guy that can lead me to Super Bowls in the future. I just don't get that vibe when I look at both of these quarterbacks, even though Carson Wentz is one.
Yeah, no, I don't see that either. And granted, I have not seen that like number 1 slam dunk. This is going to be the man quarterback at number 1 since Andrew Luck. And I mean, he looks good out there, but jury is definitely still out. And I mean, with Carson Wentz, I think a problem that people are going to see is the fact that he played for North Dakota State.
Yeah.
He didn't face the Oregons or the Alabamas or any of those top college teams, which now, I mean, especially like down in Alabama, Auburn, in that area where they pretty much consider to be NFL South, and teams are going to look at that and they're going to be like, well, he didn't play against any elite teams in college. So? Doesn't mean that he can't sling it in the NFL.
No.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Do you buy the fact about the Carson Wentz that kind of has been the sticking point on him has been fumbling the football. Fumbling the football has been a real issue for him. Do you think that he can rectify that issue if he's going to be put in a situation like with LA or like with Philadelphia where he's going to be hit a lot? And you don't know whether he's going to be able to have the strong enough ability to make that good decision and hold on to the football or not.
I think fumbling the ball is one of those things that it's a problem that can be fixed. Mm-hmm. Adrian Peterson hasn't learned that yet necessarily, but that's one of those things that it's like if somebody fumbles a lot in college, I'm not going to label them as that going to be a problem going into the pro career. Definitely something that they need to work on, but it's obvious that's an area of concern. And I mean, there are drills that you can to rectify that. So fumbling the football is not something I'm terribly concerned at. I want a quarterback with accuracy, someone who can throw the ball, and someone who's smart. And I think with Goff and Wentz, you at least have that on the surface.
Now, we're all going against this disagree to disagree thing here with these first two picks, I mean, I honestly think I think we're all in agreement here that Jared Goff and Carson Wentz are going to be the first two picks based on a king's ransom that Philadelphia and Los Angeles, whatever, gave up to get to those top two spots.
It's true.
We'll be doing that for a couple of years. It's acceptable.
Well, and I love it. And every time I think of the Los Angeles Rams, St. Louis Rams, I think of basketball. I mean...
Touche. That's good.
I think
that's good. But you look at today's NFL, quarterback, defensive end, and cornerback and left tackle. Those are your four positions that you need. Like those are like the premium positions where you get the most out of the most bang for your buck, especially in drafts now with the rookie wage scale. If you hit on any of those players, you're saving so much money over the next 4 years.
True.
Yep.
Now, Daryl, I mean, us three are in agreement. How do you feel about the 1 and 2 pick? You think it's going to be Goff, Wentz as well?
I believe it is going to be that way. And then, as you'd mentioned, again, it's the fact with that rookie wage scale, a team can take that chance. And I believe it was on Mike and Mike this morning that they brought up kind of looking back at the last 20 years when two quarterbacks were taken 1 and 2. It realistically comes out to about a 50-50 when you kind of look at it. One's somewhat of a hit, one's pretty much a bust. I mean, Andrew Luck is a decent hit so far. RG3 is
screwed. He's in Cleveland.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you look at some of the others, but I mean, you look at when they talked about Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. I mean, again, it's a total dichotomy. It seems like there's one who is a hit and one who's a miss, and that typically is what they've been talking about. I think the other thing to look at, too, is when you look at Jared Goff, and I think Brad had made this point about, how Carson Wentz wins, and that is a plus for him. I would actually look at it as the other way of Jared Goff being able to having used to losing or having experience losing at that higher level, because again, when you come in your first year or two, you're probably not going to be winning all that often with as you're kind of in that rebuilding stage. And when you're used to coming in winning 10, 12 games a year, and all of a sudden you're winning 4 in the NFL and people are throwing a mic in your face, what's wrong? All of a sudden that starts getting into the mental side of things. These guys can look great when they're winning and playing football games, but now all of a sudden you have to go through a 12-loss season, and then the entire offseason where there's no class, it's work, and you've got to figure out what's wrong with your game and how the rest of the team can come together, and then suddenly that pressure comes on you. So that's going to be a real good mental test. The last point I was going to make is I'd heard that Carson Wentz, he had some injuries, I believe, this past year, and the team still went 8-0 without him. So that's kind of that's one of those flags where I kind of throw up. I'm like, well, they probably, again, as he played at North Dakota State, I'm not knocking the fact that it is
they're a talented program.
It's a talented program, and the competition that they're facing at the same time. When you realize you remove that piece, that team is still good enough to win without him.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
And now, 1 and 2, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, right? We all agree on that. Now, number 3, we have San Diego, the Chargers. Let's start. Borna, what do you think?
Well, I hate taking stock in mock drafts because there's a million of them, and they mean absolutely nothing.
Except for ours. Ours means the most.
They're at least kind of close, and I'm looking at Laramie Tunsil, the offensive tackle for Mississippi, who, when Tennessee had the number 1 overall pick, that was pretty much a slam dunk on who was going to go number 1 overall. And, I mean, Phillip Rivers has a couple of decent years left in him, so why not get him a player that's going to keep him on his feet for the few decent years that he has left in him?
I like that pick. That's actually a really good pick for that team. They desperately need somebody on that line that can help him. But I look at the San Diego Chargers, though, and that defense is awful, like legitimately awful.
Yeah.
They don't have any cornerbacks and secondary. If you're San Diego and you look at the stock, yes, Laramie looks like a really good player, but I gotta take the slam dunk in Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah,
I can't. You cannot. You cannot at that position, that cornerback. We look at what happened with Josh Norman today. The news just came down that he's getting, a ridiculous amount of money, like $74 million and 50 guaranteed.
50 guaranteed.
If you can get a guy, if you can get a guy like Jalen Ramsey for half, or not even that, a quarter of the cost with the same type of production, you're already doing yourself a favor. So I think San Diego has to take Jalen Ramsey. I really do. They have to do it. As much as I desperately think that they need help on the offensive line. Their secondary is absolutely terrible.
Daryl?
I'm going to kind of agree with you on the last point there. Again, with the idea of taking a cornerback, my thought behind it is when you look at the way the NFL is kind of moving these days, it is geared more towards the offensive side. And in my mind, the idea of skill positions on the offensive side don't need to necessarily be as talented when it comes to, say, like wide receivers, whereas you have the advantage kind of going to the offensive side. You need that very skilled cornerback who can go down and make those plays without getting that flag thrown. And I would rather put stock in a top-tier skilled corner than, say, a receiver. Or I would rather have a guy who can shut down those receivers without getting the penalties. That's what's really going to end up being kind of, I guess, a litmus test for some of these corners and safeties, is what they can do downfield without getting penalized.
Yeah, and I feel if San Diego picks at number 3, they're going to take Jalen Ramsey. But I don't think they're going to pick at number 3 because San Diego's been very open about wanting to trade that pick, right? So, and my thing is Jerry Jones is sold. He wants Ezekiel Elliott, and what Jerry Jones wants, Jerry Jones gets. But Miami wants Ezekiel Elliott as well. I think somehow Miami's going to trade up and get that 3 spot and take Ezekiel Elliott at that point, which I think is way too high for Ezekiel Elliott because I'm just not sold on him, I guess, is my factor.
Yeah,
I can see that.
With Dallas, here's the thing. Jerry Jones has to be one of the worst GMs in the league, and thank God he's the owner, because I think if he was just a GM for any other team, he would have been fired by every single one of them. I think if they draft Ezekiel Elliott, the people in Dallas should just go ahead and start rioting. I'll help if they need. I'm all for riots and looting.
Riots are fun.
I've seen The Purge. I know what to do.
But it's a true statement. I mean, why would you take? I mean, especially with the way that running backs are being treated right now. You can survive with 2 to 3 decent running backs, and you can take those running backs in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. Yeah. Everybody thinks Ezekiel Elliott is this elite talent. Yeah. And I don't see it either. I really kind of shake my head. Ezekiel Elliott was so good because Ohio State is a pretty damn good football team.
Yeah, exactly.
And they make Ezekiel Elliott, who is a fantastic talent, but when you put him with a really, really bad line, then that's when things are not shored up, and he doesn't have that elite speed to hit the hole that you need in a running back in the NFL. I don't see why you do not take any of the other guys like a Joey Bosa or even a Ronnie Stanley for another offensive tackle that they need. Why don't you take them instead of taking a guy that you're not going to pay?
Yeah, I agree.
Once he turns 27.
No. I mean, you saw it, DeMarco Murray, why didn't they keep him?
Oh, yeah.
It was just stupid. It was absolutely stupid of them not to keep DeMarco Murray. Pay the guy.
Pay it. It's not that hard.
No.
It's not that hard, people.
Cut the check. Yeah, so I mean, we're obviously talking about Dallas right now. And the way I feel is, I don't think they're going to get Ezekiel Elliott. For some reason, I think Miami is going to trade up because they want him, whatever. But Dallas, they're smart. They'd go Bosa, like you said, Tonez, or they'd go Ramsey if he's still available because they need that. They need defense. They have Sean Lee. Enough said.
That's it. That's it. That's
the weakest anchor ever. That boat's sinking.
Yeah.
He's Captain Concussion. I'm sorry.
That's probably or blows his knee
No,
out.
you're not.
Or he blows his knee.
You're not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
But I just think Dallas has to go defense there. I don't know about you guys, but
I think they have to be.
But at the same time, Jerry Jones has this idea in his head that Tony Romo is the greatest thing to ever walk the face of the earth, and he won't just start, preparing for the fact that he's not going to play forever. So if they were smart, they would get one of those top offensive tackles if Tunsil is still on the board, or if Ronnie Stanley, like we mentioned, if they were smart.
Mm-hmm. But it's
That's
Jerry
throwing
Jones.
a big monkey wrench into it. That's an if.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and Jerry knows that the star is on the helmet, and he wants that star. He doesn't want to take, I guess, the unsexy pick when it's prime time, opening round, and you're going to have, you got line help. No one's going to remember.
This is Jerry Jones we're talking about here. Yeah.
What? Did you just do some weird effect with your actual phone to make you sound like John Wayne or something? That's what the hell is coming out of my phone?
I heard that as well.
I'm confused.
Okay, good. That wasn't just me then.
I'm always confused.
We may have lost him. I have no idea.
Toned you back? Hello?
No!
All right, well, let's go on here. But, then we move to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's a team that I honestly think they've got a lot of young talent, and I think they got a great quarterback in Bortles that they can build off of that. But, if Bosa's available or Ramsey's available, I think that's the way to go for them. Go defense on that.
Yeah, no question about it. They have the playmakers that can do some things on offense. They can get a couple more stars in defense there. They'll be back to the playoffs and having their playoff games blacked out because nobody goes to Jacksonville Jaguars games.
Touche.
True.
Hey, Jones is back.
Hey, guys, well, we left you a little bit here. We're back. We're doing our thing. We're feeling good. But Joey Bosa, he's a top-tier talent. He is the top-tier talent. He's the defensive end that you want if you want to rush the passer. He can play at a 4-3, played in a 4-3 in college. And if you really need him at an outside linebacker, he can play there. He won't be as effective as he would be in a 4-3, but I really am very, very high on Joey Bosa, like I am on Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I agree.
So we're looking down here, and you got Baltimore, you got San Francisco, and then you have Cleveland.
Yeah.
Making their way all the way down. What as you look at those three teams, what do you see the need for those three teams, especially for a team like Baltimore, who really needs an offensive tackle?
Exactly, and I think Tunsil will be available. Stupidly, he'll be available because he is he's obviously the top pick, should be the top pick in my opinion, but he's going to drop to Baltimore, and I think Baltimore is going to luck out and get him at number 6, and that's a great pick at number 6, Tunsil.
Yes,
big time
I like
value.
that pick too. Big time.
Yeah, the hardest thing for me to say is I don't know if some of these teams, if they want to make those moves ahead of them, like a team like San Diego might be sitting there on the phone for the longest time trying to find that right deal and get their big ransom if someone wanting to move up to get some of the players that we talked about. and I could see him being gone by that point, but still I could see Baltimore, a lot of the mock drafts I see have them taking, somewhere defensive end, a corner, outside linebacker. It's hard for me not to see Baltimore not taking a defensive player, but again, that's just the mentality of, I guess, the Ravens organization.
True.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Then you go, and then you go to the dysfunctional San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, we love it.
I mean, honestly, how dysfunctional are they? You get rid of a great coach in Jim Harbaugh, which was absolutely stupid, because he had a quarterback in Colin Kaepernick that worked for him and did well. And Kaepernick's a head case now, man. He's just a head case. They've tried getting rid of him, and nobody wants him. They won't take him. They can't meet an agreement with Denver. Denver wanted him, but that didn't happen.
Well, if I'm Colin, if I'm I always put myself in the player's shoes, and I am not going to take a pay cut that big and that deep, and try to play for a team who wants me to play for $4 million when I'm going to make 10.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's way too big of a pay cut for me to take, especially when you're on a 1-year deal and you don't know if you're going to have any type of backing after that 1 year is up. Let's say that Denver doesn't have as good of a season as they do this next season, and he's kind of the guy. He will be the scapegoat, and he'll probably go out to teams and say, "Okay, this is what happened when they got here. Obviously, we didn't do as well as Peyton Manning did." Well, yeah, but you're not going to get any money off of that. So I really think that Colin Kaepernick is playing this the right way. If I'm making $10 million, if I'm scheduled to make $7 to $10 million, I'm not taking a $6 million pay cut to go play with the Broncos. I'm sticking where I want to stick, and I'm nixing that trade whenever I have a chance.
So, Tonez, what do you think San Francisco should do? I
think they should probably need more picks if you really think that. Sure. They're so thin on every position on that team that you really need to find steady positions, and if they have a chance to probably move down in the draft and try to get at least 2 picks in the top round, and then you can go offensive tackle and maybe a defensive end. I would probably do that, but they're saying probably DeForest Buckner or maybe a Tunsil if he's still there.
Yeah, Buckner's what I was seeing too, but 6'7", 291? Jeez. They don't make him like that. They don't make him like that.
Big man.
That is a big man.
Big man.
Here's what San Francisco should do. This is a slam dunk for anything. They should just forfeit the season, give everyone a year off, rest, recoup, come back, try it again in 2017.
I like it.
That's fine. I'm going to agree with that for the simple standpoint that with the Rams moving out to L.A., the focus on the West Coast won't be on San Fran.
Yeah.
I mean, they can basically fly under the radar because you look at the Cardinals coming off of making the playoffs, Seattle being Seattle's in the Super Bowl, right? No, they were not in the Super Bowl. Seattle, though, making the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years, though. Again, San Fran really doesn't have to make a splash right now. They can kind of lay in waiting and then make a move.
Yeah.
I still think trading the pick and trying to acquire more assets is probably the best move for them.
If that's an option for them, I think it's the best option. But if that option's not available, I think they do go DeForest Buckner because I think he's the best available at that time.
And
I would agree with that. I would really agree with that.
And that's one of the hardest things about when you end up attempting to make a mock draft or a mockery of the draft is the idea that when we talk about teams going for the best available, it's so hard because we never know who's going to move up or what they're going to go for.
Exactly.
So when you have this kind of best available, even the GMs, those sitting in their war rooms, are going to be looking at the card like, wow, the guy who's our best available is 4 picks later than we thought, or 4 slots down. It's like, do we take him now? Do we reach for this guy? Can we move back?
And it's all dependent when people say that you reach. It's all dependent that you understand where your priorities are, and if you really believe that you're reaching for somebody, it's all, and that's the funniest thing when I see mock drafts is, well, is that if they pick somebody too high, oh, that's a reach for them. Well, do you really expect that to be a reach for them when that need is readily available,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that that's the best guy at that particular position, every other guy can have an opinion on that. It's what those guys have to deal with in the draft room and the months of preparation that they really have to make a decision at that. You get that 7 minutes, and you have to make that decision. You have to be 100% sure that decision is going to be the right decision.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know there are some teams that, like, with their first-round pick, they're going to pick the best player available regardless of what they think they actually need. So it's really all subjective.
It is.
Yeah, and we talk about best available. Let's talk about probably one of the best athletes in the draft, but he's coming off a big knee injury. Miles Jack, and I think he's one that, man, he could have been first pick overall. He's so good, but I think he falls. And because of that injury, I mean, it's tough. If you're in a situation, your team, you're in a situation where, we can wait a year for a guy, but if you're in a situation where you need someone now to plug in, you can't take Miles Jack, and you can't take Jalen Smith of Notre Dame. Those two would be, I think, top 5 picks if they were both healthy.
Yeah, definitely. But, I mean, I think some teams are worried about making the big splash, getting the fans excited over one draft pick because they think that's going to be the end-all, be-all, where I think smart football fans understand that it's like if you take a guy in the first round, they're not necessarily going to be day-one contributors, and they don't have to be. I don't need an exciting, sexy pick. Pick someone that is worth our time. Pick someone that's going to develop into a great player. Pick someone that's not named Christian Ponder.
Knew it was going to come. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the slam dunk, and you delivered like every single time you do, Morno.
Well, I feel bad that I was worrying you for a second. That it took me this long to get the dunk. I must be getting old.
We're all getting old here, buddy.
True.
That's true. We're all old and getting married and living in hospitals and whatever Daryl does. I mean, is this our midlife crisis right now? Is this happening?
I'm already past my midlife crisis. That was a couple years back.
He's good with his midlife crisis. I'm smack dab in the middle of midlife crisis.
I passed mine.
I'm
We're
still
good.
planning mine. Got a couple of great ideas.
Now, do we even waste time on choosing Cleveland's pick or not? Because it does it matter?
I don't have enough alcohol at home to really discuss and try and figure it out, so I'm fine if we just pass over this one, like most people do.
I like it.
All right.
Let's get to those Buccaneers.
Yeah, and let's let Daryl talk here. Daryl's a Buccaneers fan, lifelong creamsicle, and let's let him take over here. Daryl, what do you think Tampa Bay is going to do at 9?
I really do think I'm going to agree with what they're showing across a lot of the mock drafts. If still available, the cornerback out of Florida, Vernon Hargreaves, and just again, it's that idea of what I kind of talked about earlier. I would rather have a top tier in my mind skill position at especially at that position again where it seems like a lot of the rules and the gameplay is geared towards the offense, the quarterbacks, the receivers. And if you have that person, again, they talk about, as we just talked with Josh Norman tonight, we also have talk with Darrelle Revis during his great years. Again, that idea of that person who can basically take away a third of the field.
Yeah, that is huge, but I'm going to disagree with you, Daryl, because I'm going to say Shaq Lawson. I think you got to look at pass rush. I think, in my opinion, pass rush is more important than a shutdown corner because a shutdown corner is really based on the pass rush because it makes a corner better if a corner has to cover for less time. So if a Shaq Lawson can put pressure on that quarterback and the quarterback has less time to think, that makes that corner look a lot better because he doesn't have enough time to read the defense, so it may look a little better than the corner really is. I think a pass rush, in my opinion, which is usually right, is more important than a defensive back covering a receiver.
I look at it from the standpoint when you look at the rest of the players that they face in their division, when you have guys like Drew Brees and Matt Ryan, especially with Cam Newton, again, I think when you can make it more difficult for them to find that receiver, it is kind of a chicken and egg thing because, again, you have the hardcore pass rush that comes in and forces a throw, or if you have that coverage downfield and you force the quarterback to get out of his comfort zone, that frees up a little bit more for your front four. So, again, it is kind of a, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. So.
I'll agree with that. You look at a skill position like Shaq Lawson. Is Tampa Bay still going to be playing the 4-3 this season?
It's a great question because Lovey's gone now. So
yeah, Lovey is gone. So is the new coach going to be making any changes when it comes to defensive schemes? And that will come into play because Shaq Lawson, perfect 4-3 guy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you want a 4-3 guy that plays the run better than he plays the pass, Shaq Lawson's your guy. But if you're going to make some type of different defensive scheme plans and you might go like a 3-4, then I wouldn't take Shaq Lawson. I'd probably take Jack Conklin at offensive tackle because they really need to shore up that offensive line.
If they really want Shaq Lawson, they could probably trade down a couple of spaces because Lawson, I see, is going really late first round in a lot of mock drafts. So he might be a steal if he falls that late. But here's the thing. You draft Vernon Hargreaves if you're Tampa Bay because you can save on travel expenses. He's right in Florida. You don't got to fly him in. You don't got to have him change flights. He could probably take the damn Greyhound.
Penny pitching Morneau right there, buddy. Penny pitching. Teams are worth over $1 billion. He's penny pinching over here.
But it's interesting
by getting a guy a Greyhound.
Well, hey, I mean, why not? Times are tough. We're in a recession, I think, again.
we made the same comment when we talked about if the Rams take Goff as the fact that it's a Cal player going to L.A. You get kind of that sense of, does that make a difference at all? I don't think it really does, but I would be interested to see, if some of those other plays that you mentioned are still there available, but it's going to be one of those questions where, again, when it comes to the NFL, again, you have to worry about, essentially, if you can win your home games every week, every season, you've got 8 wins, and all you have to do is essentially split on the road. A 12-win team is more than likely going to be one of the top 2 seeds in the postseason. And you start looking at it as if you can win at home and even take 1 or 2 from your division rivals on the road, being the 10-win team more than likely puts you in a playoff position.
Yeah, especially if you're in the NFC South.
Yeah, definitely. But, going back to local players playing for, a local team, I never thought of this until I was reading the book The Agent, and I can't think of his name, but basically the guy who Jerry Maguire was based off. He represented Troy Aikman, Warren Moon, Steve Young, all those guys. He also represented the wonderful man by the name of Jeff George. Yes. Did you think we were going to talk about Jeff George in this? I made a way to talk about Jeff George. But here's my point, because Jeff George at one point really, really wanted to play for Indianapolis because that's where he was from. And the agent kind of warned him. He said, okay, the problem with that is if you're a local hometown hero, let's say you're from Florida, you end up going to play for Dallas. If you're having a rough time in Dallas, everybody's getting on you. People back at home still love you. That can be your escape. But if you're from there and you play for that team and you suck, you have nowhere to go because they hate you because you represent their team. You have nowhere to go back to.
That's a very good point, Bono, and I'm glad you brought that up because I remember, what was it? Who was it? Oh, man. Dan Marino. When Dan Marino was drafted in that ridiculous draft back in the 80s, and, he was talking about how, he really wanted to play for Pittsburgh and how he was crushed at Pittsburgh, his hometown team. He played for Pitt, that they didn't take him. And he said that was a blessing in disguise because, I think I probably would have washed out if I would have played in Pittsburgh because I was the local guy. And I think that it probably wouldn't have been comfortable for me, not having any type of escape. And I was so glad that Miami chose me where I can escape down there. And not only that, it was warm and it was not cold in Pittsburgh. So I think that has some validity to it.
Yeah, I guess we agree on that.
We got to change the name of this podcast. We're all too.
I'm not even sure
we get along too much. I'm going to start stirring some things up here. Just wait.
I like it. Let's do it.
That's all right. Hey, let's move on to the New York Giants. I think they go with protecting Eli Manning. Ronnie Stanley from Notre Dame. He's the best available. You might as well go with him.
I would have said
for me to throw things off. No, it's not. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No,
I think
no.
New York, they're going to trade completely out of the first, second, and third rounds, and they're just going to be like, you know what, our team's good enough. We're New York Giants. We're going to skip this draft. We're all going to take a break. There.
we all like to we all like to play with fireworks to blow our hands off.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Let's play with some fireworks, guys. And well, I think Darren Lee. I like Darren Lee for the Giants because they're a defensive team. Outside linebacker out of Ohio State can really play well in coverage. Also very good at getting to the quarterback, and I think Darren Lee would be a really good fit for that team and really create a lot of havoc that's really desperately needed for the Giants right now.
And one of the mock drafts I saw, they've got the Giants taking Corey Coleman, the wide receiver out of Baylor.
Oof.
And the question I have, I mean, when you look at what the Giants already have, I don't think that's necessarily a need that has to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I don't see Eli reaching out and passing as much as Peyton did again, making those throws and becoming an air down, especially in New York again, where you have that northeast outdoors. Just to me, you need a base. It's going to be one in the trenches for them, and that's really where I think, offensive or defensive line.
And I can't horribly disagree with you, Bourne, there either, because maybe they will trade back. Maybe they'll take Derrick Henry out of Alabama. Trade back late in the first round. Maybe they'll trade to, early second round, something like that, because you talk about that cold weather. You talk about New York. They don't have a running game, to be honest with you. They don't have that great of a running back. I think Derrick Henry would be great in New York, wouldn't he be?
I think so, too. And, I mean, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen because Tom Coughlin's been in charge there for so long now at head coach, and now he's not there anymore. So you've got an entirely different group there, and they've got entirely different objectives when it comes to how they're going to play their football. So this is really going to be a crapshoot, I think, in all honesty, what New York is really going to do. They may revert back to their old standard of just picking the best player available, regardless of position and needs. So, some of these guys that we're talking about in the first round that may fall back, they could jump on one of those. But again, it will really see kind of this new coach and this new regime, what they're going to do, and we'll see it here, what they do at number 10.
All right, Tonez, we'll let you take number 11 here, buddy.
Chicago Bears, first time, actually the second year for the Ryan Pace regime. Everybody's looking at last year's pick and Kevin White, who was not available for the 2015 season. He had a broken bone in his shin, or knee or whatever, broken leg, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of people
and broken hearts of Bears fans everywhere.
It's a true statement. I really wanted to see Kevin White play, and I thought he really could have helped that offense out a lot because you had Alshon Jeffrey and a bunch of garbage at wide receiver
for
the Bears. See, this is where me and you disagree.
Yep, it is.
This is where me and you disagree. I like Jay Cutler. I like Jay Cutler a lot. I think he was dealt a really, really bad hand last year with the type of wide receivers that he was dealt with. I thought he played really well for playing with Alshon Jeffrey for 3/4 of the season and a bunch of scrubs that you get off the practice squad. So I really think so. So you look at what the Bears need. They need more pass rush. They need offense. They need outside linebackers and defensive ends.
Yep.
And the guy that's continually popping up on all the mock drafts and everybody that they're looking back is Leonard Floyd out of Georgia.
Yep.
Outside linebacker, really, really good at coverage.
Athletic.
Freaky athletic. They desperately need another linebacker to really kind of do what they need to do in that 3-4 defense and really get after the quarterback. And they need a guy that they can really kind of mold, and I think Leonard Floyd is that guy.
You're telling me Shea McClellan can't get it done?
Shea McClellan is quite possibly the worst middle linebacker I've ever seen, and that's not joking. There was a vine of Shea McClellan late last year of showing him in coverage and showing him trying to play the run. The guy made at least 4 or 5 mistakes every single game at middle linebacker. Not an elite player from the former regime. Terrible. I mean, I'm still kind of dumbfounded why they still had him on the team as long as they did. Yeah. He is an absolutely horrible athlete to try to play defensive end or even outside linebacker.
He was a first-round pick. Remember that.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
I don't know if he's the worst ever first-round pick for the Bears. I mean, there was Cade McNown, there was Curtis Enis, there was Sean Salam. I mean, I can go on if you want, Tones.
There's a lot of them. But he is near the top because of how much they desperately needed something to work there, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And you feel bad for Shea for kind of being put in that position, but you're a pro. You got to be able to handle that position. If you're not going to handle that position, you're going to be cut. And I think that they wasted a season too long on him at middle linebacker when they should have gotten somebody else.
All right, Daryl and Borno.
Well, I have to chime in here because someone that I worked with in a fantasy football league, he drafted Kevin White. This was, after he was injured, and it was not guaranteed that he was going to be playing for at least the first 8 weeks. We told him that, we're not playing in a keeper league, just to make sure that he remembered. He stuck with him for about 4 weeks and then ended up cutting him. But on to what the Bears might draft. Say what you want to about Jay Cutler. I know Tones is a Jay Cutler fan or at least a defender, but most people can't stand him in and out of Chicagoland. What do you guys think about them possibly, I know I've been mentioned trading back a bit, but Jay Cutler's starting to get a little long in the tooth. Maybe do they start thinking about the next quarterback of the future? I'm looking at Paxton Lynch, quarterback out of Memphis. He's going late first round.
Yeah. See, I'm not sold.
They maybe move back a little bit, possibly consider that.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Paxton Lynch either. I mean, he played for a Memphis program that's kind of crappy. But I take a look at I do think this year they will draft a quarterback. I think it's a smart thing to do. But I think really the thing they need to do, Tones, I think you're probably going to agree with me on this, is first 2, 3, 4 rounds, defense, man. I mean, I think we got to do pass rush. I think pass rush is the big thing. The corner, we got we got Kyle Fuller. He that's okay, whatever. But I think pass rush is the main focus of the Bears, and I think outside linebacker, defensive end, it's going to be first 2, 3 rounds of the draft.
It's heavy. It's heavy, and they really desperately need another guy on that linebacking core that they can really trust. I really feel like Leonard Floyd is that guy.
I do too.
There's also talk of Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe he'll fall back in there. I don't like that too much. You already have 2 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
I know that John Fox is a guy that likes to have multiple running backs when he was at Denver. I just don't like that. I don't like that combination of having 3 running backs and taking a guy like Ezekiel Elliott so early. I mean, really so early. I'm sold on Leonard Floyd. Not only that, you'll have Alshon Jeffrey on a franchise tag this year. You'll have Kevin White, so you'll have that 1-2 punch on the offensive side of the ball. I think offense is pretty much fine. You can get some really good players in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round on offense if you really want offensive guys. But Leonard Floyd is my guy that I think the Bears will take.
I agree. Daryl?
The one thing I'm thinking about when you think about the Bears and you look at some of the pieces that they've lost here over the past, maybe 3 years or so. I mean, last year was when Jared Allen, when he had left.
Yeah.
You had, 3 years ago with Brian Urlacher. Again, you don't necessarily have kind of that cornerstone piece that comes to mind when you think about the Bears and you think about the historic defenses that they've had. And I agree with some of the statements you guys are making as far as getting that rushing in on the far end. One of the other boards I'm seeing is having Jerron Reed out of Alabama, defensive tackle, and again, that's kind of that big physical, just kind of run stuffer right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be interesting to see, I guess, depending on their philosophy of, do they want to put a guy like that kind of in the middle and then maybe try to build that speed on the edges around someone like that? Again, I don't know, but I would be interested to see it. And usually when you go with, Alabama defensive players, you usually don't miss too often. I mean, they have a lot of in my mind, the strength and the intelligence and the experience to make an impact right away.
But you look at Reggie Ragland, he played in a 4-3. So how is he going to be able to adjust to the 3-4? I think is the biggest question because John Fox and Vic Farango's defense is a 3-4 defense. And They already have Pernell McPhee. They got Denny Trevathan now. They got the kid from Indianapolis. So they're set, but they really would like one more outside rusher. And as much as I like Reggie Ragland, because I like him a lot, he's a really good player. I really believe that Leonard Floyd is that piece that they can have on the outside that can both play on that end position and also he can play outside linebacker too.
All right, so we move on to New Orleans. We'll get through these picks pretty quick because we don't care about these teams. But New Orleans, I've seen a lot of Sheldon Rankins out of Louisville, defensive tackle. Yep. I think that's a good pick for them. They were hot in the Josh Norman though. It's what I was hearing. But
well, they desperately needed help in that secondary, and because pretty much everybody on except for Drew Brees is pretty much garbage on the New Orleans Saints. So yeah, I would have said secondary as well.
Yeah, secondary or someone up front there. I've seen a lot of Sheldon Rankins too, and I think that's a pretty safe but good pick for Nolans.
Nola.
Give me some of that Creole.
Nolans.
Daryl, what are you thinking there? Same thing, or?
I'm going to go cornerback here, Mackenzie Alexander.
Yeah, like you say, secondary or a defensive line, I think is the way to go for them, too. And then we take a look at Miami, which I feel trades up to number 3 with San Diego, so San Diego's going to be there. I'm going to say Eli Apple at Ohio State. I think he's a hell of an athlete.
Yeah. I'll completely agree with that pick. Completely agree.
Yeah, we're going to burn through these mid-first round picks pretty fast there. I think no question about it. Excuse me, burped. Totally coming back up on me, boys.
Oh, there we go. Well, you know what you need to do here in about 30 minutes or so. We need to crack open a good old brewski. That's what I'm doing.
I can do a podcast from the toilet. I don't care.
What, Chipotle?
I love it.
Chipotle or Chipotle? Which is it?
Chipotle.
Favre favor.
Okay, so we moved to Oakland now, and I think we're all in agreement on Reggie Ragland.
Oakland, or is it the Las Vegas Raiders? Which is it going to be?
Touche.
It's gonna be the San Antonio Raiders. And,
well, that's
Minnesota's
option as well.
favorite transplant son, Red McCombs, is going to buy the Oakland Raiders and move there, as if the Raiders couldn't be any worse of an organization.
It's a true statement.
Yeah, a lot. Oakland needs a lot done, obviously, but not a horrible. Their offense looked really good last year. You had Amari Cooper, you had Michael Crabtree. Carr is a quarterback, man. He's a damn good NFL quarterback. I'm going to tell you that. Way better than his brother ever panned out to be. And defense, you got the stud they had last year that they drafted, who panned out to be absolutely amazing. But I think they go defense again, and they're talking that corner out of Houston, William Jackson III. He seems like a Raider, doesn't he? Just the name, William Jackson III.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And Oakland, as much as I like to make fun of Oakland because it's easy and we've been doing it for decades, they are not that far away from being a legitimate team over in the AFC West. So, they are a team that may be one or two good players away from starting to make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that.
And when you look at their division, even though Denver is coming off a Super Bowl win, I don't think Denver is going to be the same team that we expect from this past year. Kansas City still has those moments where they can get a 10-win team, but it's never pretty. They win really ugly, and that's no knock on Andy Reid, but you look at
come on now. It's a knock on Andy Reid.
Okay,
knock on Andy Reid. That's how he's always been. He's always been ugly. Andy Reid's still trying to wipe the barbecue sauce off his face for just stuffing his face in Kansas City. No, Andy Reid, you know what you're getting with Andy Reid. You'll get a solid team, but guess what? It's just like eating Taco Bell. You're going to be disappointed in the end once you get done with it.
My wife and I had we had Taco Bell breakfast one of the first times, one of the first weekends that they had breakfast. God, we just wrecked our plumbing that day, man. She was upstairs, I was downstairs. Oh my God!
So that's how we feel pretty much about Andy Reid, that he's the toilet bowl of the AFC West.
But sure, yeah. Andy Reid, wrecks your plumbing.
Wreck your plumbing, Andy Reid, right there, kid. we make our way from Oakland to Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee at 15. Everybody's talking Vernon Hargraves or any of those types. Do you see any different route that Tennessee goes?
Yeah, I do. I see Michigan State's Jack Conklin's left, and they were sold on Laramie Tunsil. Why wouldn't they be sold on another tackle? And Conklin's not bad. I think he's a solid pick, and you want to protect Mariota. Mariota is your guy. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, that 88-yard run he had last year, man, I still cream my pants every time I watch it.
I started him that week in fantasy football, still lost, but that's more of my own fault. But it wasn't his.
I had him in DraftKings that week.
Very nice.
Is DraftKings still legal, or what did they figure out with that?
Oh, I don't care about any other state. Wisconsin, it's legal, so that's all I care about.
Illinois,
legal in Wisconsin.
It's kind of legal here. Let's just say that we're on the low end.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
You live in Illinois, one of the most historically corrupt states ever. Everything is kind of legal.
The mob is
in
from Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois. I'll tell you this right now: we are the worst state in the union. We're the absolute worst state in the union. Absolutely, 100%. We just elected a governor that just shut down, not only once but twice. Still hasn't passed the balanced budget. We haven't had a budget in 19 months. Stuff is bad down here, legitimately bad. And the only reason why he stopped the government down here is because he wanted to completely just disorganize the state union and raid their pension. It is a absolute 100% mess down here. And I'll just say this right now. You guys are in states that actually know how to run government. And that's sad. Because every other state in the union can run a better government than what Illinois can right now. God,
Tonez, I got a spare bedroom here. I charge you cheap rent.
I don't want the winters. It's nice and warm down here during winter. It's decent.
I got a damp basement.
Oh,
damp
man,
basement. I like a little mold, in my basement. Let me tell you.
Hey, here's the thing: is you don't get any bacteria in your body because of the penicillin in the mold.
Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know how medically accurate that is.
As a washout from nursing school, I can confirm that is not exactly a healthy statement.
I love the washout.
A washout from nursing school.
Nursing school washout.
Brad, your kids have polio?
Oh, jeez.
I'm asking for a friend.
Anti-vaxxer.
Ay. So I think I think Conklin there for Tennessee is a good pick. I don't know about anybody else. I mean, I don't think they're too far away. I think they're a decent team. They got Delaney Walker's a stud. They picked up DeMarco Murray, and they got Mariota. And I think offensive line's a smart pick for them.
Yeah,
if he's still there.
I think that's what they were going to do, number one, and there's still plenty of offensive linemen throughout this whole first round. So, yeah, I say keep going with what you know and enjoy those extra picks.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move the perennial dumpster diver in the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, well, Matt Millen's not there, so they won't take a wide receiver.
It's still the greatest joke ever.
It is.
Matt Millen as a GM.
Yeah.
Can they actually go back and just say they want to draft Calvin Johnson again?
Yeah, that's how sad Detroit is. You have Barry Sanders retires early. Calvin Johnson Jr. retires early. They don't want to be in Detroit, so they just retire. And I doubt they retire in Detroit. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, it's you look at what Detroit needs, and they pretty much need everything.
Yeah.
And they if they can get Sean Robinson from the defensive tackle from Alabama, I think that they would really help themselves, especially since they lost Ndamukong Suh a couple of years ago.
And Nick Fairley.
And they really had, and then not only that, Nick Fairley as well. They really need somebody on that defensive tackle and that defensive line. I think Robinson is a good pick for them.
Or I think offensive line would be another good one. Ryan Kelly from Alabama, the center.
Mm-hmm. Or Taylor Decker would be a good pick for them too.
True.
And it's interesting that you guys brought up both of those names because one of the boards I'm looking at here is again they have essentially a splattering. Most of these guys are picking probably 2 or 3 are the same. Maybe one guy's taking a flyer on someone else. But this is one of the few teams at this pick where there's no consensus. It's either, the center Kelly out of Alabama, Decker, that tackle out of Ohio State, Kevin Dodd from Clemson, and it just seems like there is no consensus because I think the Lions are continued to be an organization where they know where they want to go, but they have no idea how to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's true.
The Detroit loves to bring up the fact that they went to the playoffs once every 10 years. They love to talk about that.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I mean,
but you feel bad for fans of that team because it's walking. You're already in a bad situation living in Detroit to begin with because it's cold for 10 months out of the year, especially during that time when it's cold, rainy, and snowy. Mm-hmm. And then you walk into a perennial loser every single year.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're a Detroit Lions fan and you haven't committed suicide the past 5 years.
Yeah, especially if you live in Flint. But then you go to Atlanta, who is a team that, they're good every year. I'm sorry, they're a good team. They're just a little bit away. What do they do? I mean, they've got offensive weapons. I think defense is the must for them. They don't have a good defense.
No.
Well, offensive or defensively, Atlanta needs to pick. They need to get people that can close out games because the last 2 seasons, Atlanta could have been perennial playoff teams. But they completely choke in the fourth quarter of every single game, and they've been doing that.
Well, they started 6-0 last year.
So they need defense, and they need people that can close the door, get these wins, and not have to have Matt Ryan put up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns every game just to win.
Yeah, I agree. 6-0 they started last year.
And missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
big pile of bad in Atlanta in the ATL.
And
do you think that they take a flyer on Miles Jack? I mean, if he's there, do you think they take a flyer on him, even with the medical reports telling that he may not be ready?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's a good one, but I don't know if Atlanta is a team that can wait because I think Atlanta could be one player away on defense. I think if they get a good defensive player, they could be in the playoffs. I mean, do I think Carolina is going to go back and be what they were? No, I don't because they lost Josh Norman. I think he was a huge part of that defense, and I just don't think Carolina is going to go back to the Super Bowl. Maybe be a wild card, but I don't know. That's such a wide open division that you never know with that division. You really don't. The only thing you do know is it's not going to be the Buccaneers. Sorry, Daryl.
No, it's not going to be the Bucs.
I'll agree with that.
Sorry, my man. I'm sorry.
I mean, and that's a solid point to make. Though is the fact that when they look at the rest of that division, Atlanta's kind of sitting right now. You would think when you rank them in that 3 spot because they know the Saints are probably going to be better than them next year. I would have a strong time not saying that, and the same with Carolina. And they have to jump at least one of those teams in order to be considered a playoff team. I don't see them ranking, in one of the bottom 2 spots in the NFC South and still making the postseason.
Yeah,
and that's where so much of this comes in is a lot of these teams, they just need to shoot for that 10, 11 wins and then get to the playoffs because we've seen it happen before where there are teams who can come in as that 6th seed, and they just need to hit that stride week 15, 16, whatever it is, and be able to carry that momentum into the playoffs.
Yeah. So then we move on to Indianapolis, and I think you got to protect Andrew Luck. I mean, he's your prize possession. He is the real deal if he's healthy. But you saw last year he wasn't healthy because he got the crap kicked out of him. He literally did. I mean, I honestly think Matt Bourne probably could have had a league leader in sacks if he played against Indianapolis last year every week.
That offensive line is terrible.
Yeah.
I could probably, I can't get the ball too far downfield, but I can play the West Coast style, 2-3 yards here and there, hit the check down guy. I'm good for that.
But I think they need to shore up that offensive line. Taylor Decker if he's available, Ryan Kelly if he's available, Jack Conklin if he's available. I think if there's an offensive lineman available at that point, they take him. I mean, their defense isn't good either, but I don't care. Andrew Luck is your guy. You have to protect Andrew Luck and keep him healthy because you're in every game if he's healthy.
Yep,
yes,
absolutely.
agreed.
I mean, he's your career guy. He's a guy who's probably going to get a nice, healthy contract extension next year. So, yeah, keep him protected, keep him upright and healthy, because even with a mediocre to weak defense, I think Andrew Luck can be good enough to carry the team on his own.
Well, we look now. We moved to Buffalo, and, it's Buffalo.
Why would anybody want to move to Buffalo?
No doubt.
Jim Kelly did.
William McKinley, he went to Buffalo once.
He did. Yes, he did. I forgot about that. Well, everybody's talking defensive tackle for Buffalo and Chris Jones or maybe a cornerback that they could use. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I would have to get my best friend Phil on here. He's more of a Buffalo Bills fan than I will ever be. And he would give me a better sense of what they really need on that team.
Yeah, and I think defense is the way they're going to go. I mean, they're sold on Tyrod Taylor. They got some talent on offense. But it's Rex Ryan. I think he's one of those guys. He's going to go defense in the first round, or wants to. I mean, he obviously doesn't make the ultimate decision, but I think that's what they'll want to go, because I mean, look, when he was in New York, there was defense, right? So that's my opinion with Rex Ryan and the Buffalo. I think they're going to go defense. Who best available defensive player, whoever's available at that point, I think. And if Vernon Hargraves is there, I think it's a great pick for them.
I'm thinking Sheldon Rankins if he's still there.
Yeah, if he's still there, that's a great pick too. Like say that defensive tackle, that's I think the way to go. And now we take a look at another AFC East team, the New York Jets. And I have seen this, and I don't think I've seen one different mock draft that had anybody different at this spot. Paxton Lynch. So you're telling me you draft Geno Smith a couple years ago, and, you're not sold on him. Mark Sanchez, we're not sold on him. Paxton Lynch is now their guy, apparently. So every 2 or 3 years, they get a guy who they think is their guy. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm not sold on Paxton Lynch. I'm not sold on any of the quarterbacks. I'm a Connor Cook guy. I think he's better than all 3 of the quarterbacks that are going to be drafted before him. But it looks Paxton Lynch is going to go to the Jazz.
Well, I was going to say, just look right across town. When you have the Giants who've had Eli Manning now for probably a dozen plus years.
Yeah.
And to realize that the Jets have just been kind of this carousel of quarterbacks, and they have yet to spin the wheel and land on that guy that they can put out there for, 5 years, that they can say is, okay, we know coming in, this is going to be our starter.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, how many times can you sit there and, roll the dice on someone and say, well, we're going to give this guy a shot. Maybe he can come in, he can surprise us, whatever, be a game manager, as they call it. Someone who can just be there, take the snap, and don't mess up. That's all they're looking for is, the guy that can throw 20, 30 passes a game.
Yeah.
A couple, 180, 225 yards, maybe a touchdown. Don't throw a lot of interceptions. Don't lose the ball. But again, it's hard to say what the Jets are going to push for.
Well, and what do you get out of Geno Smith now? I mean, if you want to pick the quarterback, what, you're giving up on Geno Smith already?
And that's an interesting question to ask, because has he shown anything? Has he shown enough that he could give you some value off the field in way of a trade? Is there a team out there that when they come begging for a quarterback, you can shop in and get something of value? I don't know.
I don't really know either. You look at Paxton Lynch. I like his measurables. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't know where you go from here, especially when it's a quarterback carousel in New York. Mm-hmm. And I think Eli Apple is if he's still there, I think he's a good pickup for New York.
Yeah, he's an athlete.
I mean, New York they have to stop with their career mantra of just playing not to lose. They got to get a difference maker day one here. They're one of the few teams that they need to do something to spark something.
And now we take a look at the Redskins, of course, or should I say that? I don't know. Is it illegal? And you have A'Shawn Robinson, who I think is a good pick for them, a defensive tackle. I think defense is a way to go for them. I think on offense, okay. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I mean, you could see maybe a wide receiver going there as well, but I think we've seen a common theme in this year's draft is defensive line, and there are a lot of good defensive linemen in this draft. So I just think, that's what you got to do is take that defensive lineman and hope he pans out.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I've got Jerron Reed, defensive tackle from Alabama, going to them. I think he could fit in well with their system there.
Sure.
And yeah, like you said, I think offensively they're not too far away. That they don't necessarily need to get someone in the first round to make a difference. Firm up that defense a little bit and make it so that Cousins doesn't have to be the comeback kid at the end.
Yeah, and they're playing in a crappy NFC East anyways.
Yeah. Bad. A big pile of bad in the NFC East. That's what it is.
And you move on to Houston. A lot I've seen is they're going to go wide receiver, somebody that can be a speed demon on the opposite of DeAndre Hopkins. The one I look at is Corey Coleman. I remember watching him at Baylor. That was a lot of fun, watching that Baylor offense.
Sub 4.4 really can make plays, really good in changing direction. Really somebody that Brock Osweiler is going to need. Everybody, the Texans are sold on him. They are sold. They saw something in Brock Osweiler that they really liked, and now they got to be able to make sure that they have wide receivers that can be effective. And Corey Coleman's the guy, I think.
Yeah, I think he is too.
No, I mean, what is with giving Brock? Have teams not learned that you cannot give a guy franchise quarterback money after only seeing him play in like 2 or 3 games? I mean, you look at Matt Flynn a couple years ago. He played 1 game for the Packers, 1 singular game, and threw 4 touchdowns. And everybody, pretty much like any Packer player, falls in love with him immediately. He goes to Seattle. They pay him a ton of money, and he doesn't play.
Doesn't even start.
Doesn't play. Same with Matt Castle. Fills in for
Tom
Brady and does very well. And then he goes to Kansas City, and they give him tons of money, and he didn't really do anything there.
And then where'd he go after that?
He went to Minnesota, but we weren't expecting him to be, the end-all, be-all of everything that we need.
And anything at that point was better than Christian Ponder.
Exactly. I would have just been fine. No quarterback. No, go old school football and just have like the fullback run the entire offense, then have Christian Ponder.
1940s Army.
All right,
Christian Ponder.
So now we go.
I don't.
Now we go to, the Vikings. 0-4 in Super Bowls, and they have one good year every 10 years. And who do you think they're going to take, Borno?
Well, they're going to go wide receiver right now because that is the thing that's really going to help out the offense right now. I mean, they don't need a speed guy because right now we haven't developed our downfield passing game here. Teddy can throw the ball deep, but we don't necessarily need him to. So we're going to be playing in that 20 to 30-yard downfield passing range pretty much all the time. So the guy that I'm seeing a lot and the guy that I really like is Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver out of Mississippi. This is a big physical guy, doesn't have a lot of speed, but this is a guy who can catch the ball. He's going to be great inside the 20s. He can be a touchdown machine, and that's exactly. Teddy needs a reliable target in the end zone when we get down there, and I think Treadwell is the guy. Yeah, I mean, and I could see them going with Josh Doxson, wide receiver from TCU. I mean, that's definitely a possible option too, but some teams might jump and grab him. But I'm on the Laquan Treadwell train right now.
Yeah, and I think Treadwell is going to fall to that far because he could easily be a top 10 pick, but he doesn't have that top end speed. And I think that's what a lot of people had said with Treadwell. But he's the best wide receiver in the draft, just minus the speed. It's really what he's missing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a tremendous athlete, but I mean, so many wide receivers have succeeded in the NFL and will continue to succeed in the NFL, and they don't need to be the fastest guy. I mean, look at Larry Fitzgerald. One of the 4 or 5 of us might be able to outrun him. Even in his prime, you don't need that. You need a guy with great hands that can run a route and is gonna get up and get those jump balls.
Well, and Hines Ward, I'm going to say the same way. I mean, he wasn't necessarily a fast guy, but he was a good, in my mind, a possession receiver as well, and that's what you're looking at. It's really interesting when you look at these, 2 to 3 picks, this stretch here, where it looks like a lot of these teams between Houston, Minnesota, and into Cincinnati next, a lot of them are looking at all kind of having the same need within that wide receiver category.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Laquan Treadwell. I think that he has the ability to go up and get balls, as you guys said, and being able to go over the middle, be that possession receiver. And Teddy Bridgewater really needs that guy that can be reliable over the middle. And you have AP. I mean, but you have to have a passing game because everybody keys on AP. AP is all world. AP is the guy. But you have to have a wide receiver and you have to have a passing game in this league to be able to be successful. And Laquan Treadwell is a fantastic pick for the Vikings at 23.
Yep, and I mean, Teddy, the thing with Teddy is, I mean, he doesn't put a lot of zip on the ball, but his passes are extremely accurate. Even the passes that he missed, like, they're right on target. It's just guys like, the Vikings had Mike Wallace last year, who, unless you're throwing him a deep route and he's catching it over his shoulder, he's completely useless. He cannot catch in those 10 to 20 yard, quick crossing route ranges. Same with Cordero Patterson. I think he's pretty much relegated to just being a kick returner, and I think that's all the best that we can hope for up here. So they need a guy that is going to be on the money because Teddy's passes are he's not going to over or underthrow you. His passes are going to be right in the range there. So they got to get a guy with that's going to be big, physical, and is going to get that. So I think Treadwell is going to fit in perfectly here.
Is he going to fit in the new stadium?
Oh, he's going to fit in that new stadium. It's so pretty.
Man.
It's so pretty. Thank God I don't have to sit in the Metrodome ever again. Ever again.
That's sad though.
I don't think it's sad. I don't think it's sad. I'll be honest. I hated the Metrodome.
Yeah,
I hated going in there and watching games. I felt like I was in a time zone. Like I was like, oh my goodness, when can I get out of here? Can't believe you guys
every single baseball game I saw in the Metrodome. It was a gorgeous 72-degree sunny day outside, and I'm like, God, I'd give anything to not sitting here right now.
And then you open that damn door to go outside, and you about lose your freaking hat because it sucks you off.
That's the best when we get tourists out of town that don't realize it. We're walking treadly through it. These people are falling and losing their hats.
Well,
we look next at Cincinnati now, and everybody thinks, and I think is an agreement, Josh Johnson would really help the opposite of A.J. Green.
Oh yeah, I agree. And Mohamed Sanu came on last year too. You get a third receiver in there. That's a scary offense because Andy Dalton he takes a lot of heat, but I really think he's a good quarterback. And they finally won a playoff game last year.
Woo! Way to go! You're no
Congratulations,
longer the
Cincinnati. Yes, they're no longer the Bungles. The Cincinnati Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, and actually they've cleaned up their ramp sheets as well.
They gotta get rid of perfect. And
like I said, it's a stretch right now where can you see Houston, Minnesota, and Cincinnati essentially having the same 3 or 4 names on their list, and then it's essentially like, okay, cross one off, who's the top one? Because again, they're all looking kind of at that ability to either have that possession guy, someone stretch the field. They're looking for someone to help improve their passing game and take them to that next step. And that's the thing with the wide receiver is it can be plugged in first year and have an impact immediately.
And then I think we move on to Pittsburgh, and I think they'll go defense. I don't know why, but it just seems the right thing for Pittsburgh.
I got a cornerback here on one mock draft I'm looking at. Artie Burns, corner out of Miami. I could see him fitting in there and being serviceable. But there's still plenty of good defensive linemen. Yeah. And, I mean, Pittsburgh has flourished with having great defensive line over the years, so it wouldn't surprise me if they went that route either.
Yeah, and then I think you move on to Seattle, and I think they go Kim Dichie. I think he fits that Seattle defense. He's just a beast. I mean, he was a beast, and he is a beast, and he isn't. He kind of reminds me of Jadeveon Clowney, though, so that's kind of scary.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
At this late in the first round, I mean, if you do get someone that has the ability to potentially be like a Jadeveon Clowney on a good day, then you take it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And up next, I've talked to multiple Packers owners, as they'll let you know that they paid $250 to be an owner.
Stop it. Jeez.
The most expensive toilet paper ever.
Hey, I'm a Packer shareholder. I donated money to $1 billion corporation, and I get nothing out of it, but I'm special.
stupid. Absolutely stupid.
So a lot of things I've seen there for the Packers is that Reggie Ragland, Tonez you talked about earlier, and then also Andrew Billings, the nose tackle out of Baylor. Both of them I've seen. Billings is an athlete for being 300 and some pounds. I mean, 5'05", 40, that's pretty good. 27-inch vert. That's pretty good as well for being 315 pounds or whatever he is. But Reggie Ragland, awesome. He's a great linebacker. And I've also heard Jalen Smith out of Notre Dame obviously blew his knee out in the bowl game. But the Packers are a team where they don't have to draft someone that can come in and play right away. They could sit and wait on a Jalen Smith. The Packers are going to be good. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. As much as we hate to say it, being Bears fans, Buccaneers fans, Vikings fans, the Packers are going to win. They're going to be the contender every year because Rodgers is at quarterback, and I think they don't need a player to come in and make a noise right away.
Well, I think I'm going to have to. I got to slightly disagree with you about that, Born, because of B.J. Raji and his announcement of his hiatus from football.
Yeah,
they really could use a guy like Andrew Billings in the middle of that line. To really kind of stabilize something in the middle of that line. And I think Billings is the perfect match for the Green Bay Packers.
As we all know, most of our hatred for the Packers comes from the fact that everybody just talks about them and how they're the greatest thing out there. This is where any year when I think that the Packer talking gets to a ridiculous level, they outdo themselves. I think it was ESPN.com did a mock draft. Okay, for all the teams like they normally do, and then they rated each team's mock draft. They gave the Packers an A+ on a draft that they have not done yet. So they gave themselves an A+ for the team, for the players that they picked for Green Bay on their end. I'm done. I can't deal with it anymore. I need to lie down.
That's terrible. Please lie down for a second, Boris. Lie down for a minute. Get your bearings. Take a Tylenol, do what you have to do. But yes, that's ridiculous. But that's what they do. The Green Bay Packers, every single year, though, when draft time comes, always seem to pick the right guys at the right time, and they develop them too with the sense of it's a plug and play system. You know that if somebody's going to go out, they have a guy that they can plug right in, and it's as a Bears fan and also as an NFC North fan, we can't stand it. It hurts so bad because that they're going to draft well and they're going to be a respectable and good team year after year after year after year, and we have to deal with it and continue to deal with it every single year. I can't stand it.
But Tonez, there's only one team that's undefeated on Brett Favre night. You know who that is? That's the Bears.
Oh man, probably one of the strangest, most exciting Bears games from last year was that game.
Yeah,
absolutely 100% strange.
And I'll tell you what, I was watching it at my girlfriend's parents' house with all Packers fans.
Oh, you can hear a pin drop from there. A pin drop.
Yeah, but I'm going to kind of agree on one of the points that was made about the idea that plug, when a guy drops, you can just plug someone in. It's an analogy I can make almost with like the St. Louis Cardinals and their pitching staff. This is just an analogy. I'm not bringing up any fandom. I'm just saying it's that same mentality. But
it is.
On a different note, when it comes to the Packers, I don't know if they'll take it at this point, but one of the things I was reading is the fact that this will be the third year that they'll have the same starting five, or at least plan to have the same starting five on their offensive line. 3 of those 5 actually are in a contract year this year, and it seems like when it comes to cap space after this year, they won't be able to afford all 3 of them. So I'm thinking that this might be the point where, if not this round, but definitely later on, they will be getting offensive line help because they know that there are going to be spots that they will have to fill, maybe not this year, but a year or 2 down the road.
It's a good point.
I like it. I like it. I mean, I hope the
You like
Packers
the point,
take
not
someone.
the Packers.
Exactly. I hope they take another Tony Mandrich. Screw him. I don't want him to win. I mean, take Tony Mandrich.
I'm tired of
Hey,
it.
let Barry Sanders go to the Lions again, idiots. How dumb of a draft pick was that? Tony Mandrich is great in college. Yeah, congratulations. Anyways, I digress. Now we move on to Kansas City.
Who wants some barbecue?
I do. I can
know
always go
Andy
for some
Reid
barbecue.
does.
I could always go for some barbecue. I'll tell you that right now. But, they're coming off the Royals World Series and all that fun jazz. But Kansas City, what do they do?
Cornerback.
Corner?
Artie Burns
Yeah.
out of Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Very
I
long
think
arm.
I think if he falls there, you take it.
With losing Marcus Peters,
Sure.
you got to be able to replace guys, and Artie Burns I think fits the bill.
The most interesting thing I see in one of these mock drafts is one of the guys has Kansas City taking Michael Thomas, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. I'm thinking to myself, they don't use the wide receivers they have now. Why would they draft one?
It's so true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I mean, they realistically should just line up with 3 tight ends
Yeah.
and just take a page right out of the Patriots book and okay, there you go. That's what you need because they don't throw to any of these
No.
receivers.
Well, and another
Well,
thing
I'm
with
sorry to interrupt,
No
but
problem.
I must say this about Kansas City. You have to remember right now, they have the brain at offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Brad Childress is at the helm of offensive coordinator.
Ned Flanders.
Coach Ned Flanders, in his words up here in Minnesota, which is famous, I don't know if his words echoed throughout the rest of the league, but he referred to the Vikings offense one time as a kick-ass offense. I think we were near down 26th or 27th in total offense. Yeah, it was kicking somebody's ass.
Yeah, you look at Kansas City and you look at Jamal Charles, who's an awesome running back, but isn't healthy very often. Do they maybe take a chance on Derrick Henry at that point?
If he's there, I'd take him.
Yeah, I mean, just look how dominant Jamal Charles is when he's healthy. He's amazing.
Well, and
They got a really good offensive line too.
Yeah.
it fits into their scheme.
Yeah, it does.
I know we talked about it earlier about, why in the first half of the draft would you take a running back, but for some of those teams, it's not their style. But in Kansas City, that is their style.
Yeah. I agree.
You can go down the list of names of guys starting back with Priest Holmes. Whatever happened to that guy?
Yeah, right?
All of a sudden, he just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he got hurt. He blew out his knee, and
Yeah.
that was pretty much the end of his career.
but there was no pomp and circumstance. It was just kind of like one day he's sitting there, and the next day he was absorbed into a black hole.
Pretty much, that's what it is.
And now we move on to the number 29th pick, which was supposed to go to the New England Patriots. Let the Tom Brady ball jokes begin.
Giselle deflated at
I feel
Tom's balls.
this is a deflating experience right now.
Say all the ball jokes you want. He's married to Giselle, so I got nothing.
And say what you want about the Patriots.
I really don't either.
Say what you want about the Patriots. They're going to be good again this year. I don't care. They're going to win. They're going to win the AFC East or whatever.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the best team in the AFC. Oh, in my opinion, I think they are the best team in the AFC. But
Easily.
and then you move on to Arizona now. Arizona's a team. They're right there. They are freaking awesome.
They're
love
so close.
watching Arizona, and
So
that.
close.
And I'll tell you, we talk about me watching the Bears game, the Bears Packers game with all Packers fans. No, I'll tell you what. I was at there was a bowling tournament I was at, and all the fans at the bowling alley were Packers fans during the Arizona Packers game, and I tell you, it was awesome. You had these Packers fans getting so nuts about the Hail Mary Jeff Janis caught, woohoo, and then you crap the bed in overtime.
I love it.
Legit
I
crap
love
the
it. I could make a swimming pool out of the tears of Packer fans with all of their big playoff losses over the last couple of years.
And when it comes down to a Packers loss, whose fault is it? It's the refs. I'll tell you, that's who it is. It's the refs every time.
Always the refs.
Every time.
Always the refs.
Unless you're Brandon
Always the
Bostic.
refs.
Yeah, unless you're Bostic. Exactly, Daryl. Then you just get kicked out the team.
It's interesting when you talk about the idea of making a lake out of all those tiers. Does that make it 10,001 lakes?
It would, roughly.
Touché.
Well,
Touché.
the sad part about Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, Wisconsin has more lakes, idiots.
Well, yeah,
Well, I
but
mean,
you have
the-
cheese.
But But you look at what happened with Minnesota this past year. I think that there'd probably be 30,000 away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it.
Well, I appreciate you taking this long to do it. I figured I'd have to start defending myself out of the gate. So
I was going to make a comment when you had said, about how, Teddy has got him in positions to win, and I was going to say, yeah, except they can't make a field goal. But again, it's one of those things where right now, as I said, and Brad saw it earlier, Minnesota currently is partying like it's 1999. And
oh man, come on!
Anderson is going to miss the celebration.
That's ridiculous.
And now we've got some more lakes of tears. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so
we're purifying ourselves in the waters of Lake Minnetonka right now.
Borno, which hurts worth, Blair Walsh or Gary Anderson? I mean, both for me were hilarious.
Well, I'd have to say, here's the thing, though. I can't 100% defend either of those guys, but the way that I see it, games do not come down to a single field goal. You look back at Gary Anderson, and, the Vikings defense in that game completely crapped the bed. They had a great lead. Going through midway through the fourth quarter, they were running the show, and defense completely crapped the bed. Now, part of that was because John Randall got hurt near the end of the second quarter, so he wasn't in at all the whole second half. I think if John Randall plays, there's a different end to that story. Fast forward now to the thing with Blair Walsh. As awful as that was, it should not have come down to that field goal because Adrian Peterson fumbled when they were driving and in field goal range, lost the ball there. Then Seattle has that horrible snap where it goes completely over Russell Wilson's head. Two Vikings players are on it, and Russell Wilson gets around all of them, turns it into a 40-yard gain. That shouldn't have happened. That game it never comes down to just one single play. Even with the Packers losing to Arizona there at the end, that game should have never gone to overtime.
No,
Arizona so many things that you can change where it doesn't have to come down to the field goal kicker. Yes, they take the blame because they're in the position to, win the game, especially back in '98 when Gary Anderson hadn't missed anything all year long. And then now with Blair Walsh, who, he was having kind of a rough season, but he was close enough and just right dead on and completely missed it. Now, granted, it was also 850 degrees below zero that day.
Sounding like a Packers fan.
I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, it's he is the founding member of the Ray Finkel Kicking Academy. I'm sorry, but you look at what Arizona did this past season. That they were so good. Ryan Kelly kind of jumps out at me. Center from Alabama. They really could use a little bit more help on the interior part of that line, especially on the offensive line. But I think that's who Arizona takes. And now we go to the Carolina Panthers, runners up for the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Super Cam Newton. Who do they take?
Well, anybody who can score in a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Jeez, that was pathetic.
It was bad.
It was a horrible Super Bowl to watch. Horrible Super Bowl
to watch. It was bad. Now the problem is they lose Josh Norman. So do they go defensive back now? Now they lost their best defender. One of the they had so many good defenders. It's hard to call him the best, but he's up there. Do they go that now? It's tough to say now with Norman, off the team, which I think is absolutely stupid. I don't understand why they got rid of him. I understand they couldn't agree, but give the man money.
Yeah, Washington had no problem giving him $75 million. Yeah. Unless Carolina's completely strapped and just couldn't afford to take the cap hit. Yeah. But either way, Norman is gone. He's not going back. So I think, even though before they were probably looking at beefing up that defensive front again, I think they got to look at corner and see if anybody's available there at that pick. I think you got to take them, even if it comes as a reach to somebody else. I think that's where you got to go.
I think you have to look at maybe trading that pick and trying to trade up.
Sure.
And trying to, and because that earlier in the part of that draft, there's going to be a lot of cornerbacks. There's going to be a cornerback run, and if you really look at a guy like Artie Burns, or maybe if you get lucky enough and William Jackson III, you could probably trade with Pittsburgh a little bit and try to find something. I think that's what they have to do. They really need to trade up and try to find a cornerback to replace Josh Norman.
I can't disagree with that. And then we move on to Denver, and my pick is balls out Chris Jones.
Ooh, I like that.
Interesting. The thing is,
like
though,
that.
with Denver,
he's the only man to have his balls fall out running a 40.
True statement.
He probably moved up a couple of spots in the mock drafts because of that, just because of the mockery of it all.
Cheerleaders are going to the GM.
With Denver is they have to, without a doubt, be the worst number one overall seed team I had ever seen. I mean, what did they win? Their first 7-8 games? They could have easily lost every single one of them. And a big part of that was because Peyton Manning was just not on his game. So the thing, and they didn't really lose a lot in the way of free agency. So that team, defensively, they're going to be dangerous again. So I don't think that they necessarily need to fill a hole right there at defense. I could see them going the Raven Clark, offensive tackle from Texas Tech. That's a possibility. Keep Brock Osweiler upright, see if he can figure out the offense. But that's the thing. That's what can be scary about Denver right now. If they can get offense figured out, that could easily be a 14-15 win team.
Yeah, they got to get a quarterback first. So you said Brock Osweiler, but he's in Houston, Morno.
No, yeah. I mean, but he's young and he might be able to figure things out and probably play have I been drinking? What the hell's wrong with me? They don't have a quarterback.
They don't have a quarterback.
Exactly.
I've been on the phone with you tards for far too long tonight.
But they really need to figure out something at the quarterback position. And once they figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position, you have to be able to protect that quarterback position. I think offensive tackle is a really good move here.
Yeah. And it looks like they're going after Brian Hoyer, which he's not a horrible quarterback, but I mean Peyton Manning had a noodle arm last year and he did well in Denver. So that's the way I look at it. As long as that defense, if they can get the Von Miller thing figured out, I think they'll be okay. But I think that's why you go defensive tackle with Chris Jones, because you lost some guys there at that defensive tackle position. And if Von Miller can come back, and I mean he'll be back, but are they going to pay him?
Well, what about they did lose Danny Trevathan last year. That is actually a pretty big loss for that Broncos defense. He was a really good job. He did a really good job on the offside opposite of Von Miller. So I think you have to really look at is there any linebackers available at that time?
True.
You need to kind of really look at that. And maybe a guy like Vernon Butler, a defensive tackle, really could beef up that defensive tackle front too.
I'm going to have to say on an offensive line standpoint, when you look at a guy like Jason Spriggs, he's an offensive tackle out of Indiana. I know it's weird saying an Indiana player being taken in the first round of the NFL draft. But one of the things to think about with Denver is the fact that they had a free agent pickup here with Russell Okung. So they've got a little bit of help there, again, on that offensive line. So it's building the depth. It's not necessarily a starter role, but it's again, what we talked about with that kind of plug in place. It's the point now where there's more polishing that needs to be done with Denver with the pieces that they have lost, but when they can kind of add that extra layer, maybe not the top tier talent that can come in, but having the serviceable guys who can fill those gaps during the times. But I still have a hard time seeing Denver really. I don't know. It's hard to not say that they're going to win that division, but at the same time, you look at San Diego. I don't think it's going to be as awful as they had been.
No.
Oakland certainly is on the upswing, and Kansas City still led by a walrus. So, I mean, and that's essentially how he coaches too. He kind of lays there and suns himself, and things just kind of happen.
And we're doing NFL mock draft here on Disagree to Disagree, but I gotta say we're at playoff time of a few other sports, and I'm gonna go to my NBA insider here, Tonez. What do we got? Who do you think? Who is your pick to win the NBA Finals? Is it the Warriors again?
You know what? With the Warriors and Steph Curry's injury the past couple of games, it's really kind of 1A and 1B between the Warriors and also the Spurs in the West. Just both of those teams are just so good at what they do on the offensive side and the ball. And also with the Spurs and Coach Popovich. Both of them. I mean, this is a tailor-made. I really wish that both of these teams were on opposite sides, because I would love that to be the NBA Finals this year. It's probably not going to be, because I think it'll be Cleveland making their way to the finals once again. LeBron James, Kevin Love, only to lose to a Western Conference team, because let's be honest, the top three Western Conference teams are Golden State, are San Antonio, and are Oklahoma City. Those are the three top teams in the West, and it's 1A, 1B, and 1C.
Yeah.
Whoever comes out of the West is going to win the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
You hate it to be like that, but that's exactly what it is right now. And I just think that whoever wins that series between Golden State and also San Antonio is the team that will win the NBA Finals this year. And I really think it might be San Antonio. I think the defensive end and the way that they built that team, I think is going to create real problems for Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the outside.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, Tonez. I think Spurs is the way to go. I mean, I looked at it from different ways, and who do I think is the best chance to beat the Warriors? Clippers are going to give them a good series.
Yeah.
Now, if they play Oklahoma City can score some points. I'll tell you that. They can score against anybody. But the Spurs can shut anyone down, including the Warriors, which they did earlier this year.
But that's going to be the main point is, again, when you look at where the seeding is, Spurs at 2 and Thunder at 3, they're going to meet prior to that Western Conference final. So it's going to be, they don't have to worry about going through both of them. But when you look at, say, a team like San Antonio or Oklahoma City having to go through the other, and then they have to take on Golden State, I think that's what's going to be really interesting to see is, because I'm guessing between Oklahoma City and San Antonio will be a 7-game grind.
There's a good chance.
On what Golden State does in their semifinal matchup, I mean, if they blow through that, say they win in 5, then all of a sudden they have an extra couple days of rest.
Yeah,
it's going to be really interesting. This is one I just want to throw it out there, and you can tell me to shove it wherever. But if you were given the option of a bet, you can either take Golden State or the field, San Antonio or the field, or Oklahoma City or the field. Which one of those would you feel the most confident and the least confident on?
I would feel the most confident out of San Antonio in the field, and the least confident I would feel would probably be Oklahoma City, because the ability of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook to coexist in the fourth quarter. That's always been kind of the alpha beta type of thing that's really happened with that team, especially throughout the season. You just can't trust both of those guys to handle good offensive sets in the half court. Yes, Kevin Durant can shoot the lights out, but the problem is that he ultimately kind of marginalizes what Westbrook can do on the offensive end, and he is an alpha guy. So I think that if I were to pick the betting favorite, I would go San Antonio 1, and with the least favorite, I'd have to say Oklahoma City. And it hurts me to say that because I like what Oklahoma City does, but it's just late in games they just don't know how to really run an offensive set to get good quality shots against a good defensive team.
Let's throw this out there. Where's Durant next year?
I think he stays in Oklahoma City.
Do you?
Yeah.
Borno?
I think Westbrook goes though.
I'm a Timberwolves fan, so I don't know how much clout I have with this group here, but no, I think the Durantula stays with Oklahoma City. I don't see any way that they let him go somewhere else.
Now, Tonez, do you think Westbrook goes out to LA then because of UCLA?
It's a possibility, or you could have Westbrook kind of go someplace else. There's a lot of teams that are going to have a lot of cap room the next 2 to 3 years that are going to be bidding for this guy. This guy is a triple-double machine.
Oh, yeah.
You want this guy on your team. Yeah. And let's say you're – and I'll throw this out there right now. Let's say you're Minnesota.
Yep.
And you don't believe in Ricky Rubio anymore. And you're Tom Thibodeau. And you say to yourself, you know what, we really need an alpha player on this team. That's the Karl Anthony Towns. next to Andrew Wiggins, because Wiggins, I think, is a better shooting guard than he is a point guard for this team. Do you kind of break the bank and go after a guy, like Russell Westbrook?
Yeah.
I think that's a legitimate place for that he can turn to. Now, saying that, and Borno, I know there's a lot of excitement with Tom Thibodeau up there.
We're just excited to actually have a coach that was interested. We actually had we had candidates that we interviewed up here. There was a couple years ago where they didn't interview any coaches because nobody wanted to coach here. Nobody. So we're just excited that people care again.
Now, is there a lot of buzz up there? Because Thibodeau, that's a big hire. I really think it is. Is there a lot of buzz about him up there?
There's a lot of buzz about him because I think the picture is starting to become complete now because Wiggins can lead this team. Wiggins can be, I think, a top NBA talent someday. You're seeing Towns is probably going to be the rookie of the year. He had a really good rookie season. 2 number 1 overall picks. Plus, we got a lot of great supporting cast. Shabazz Muhammad usually scoring 20, 30 points off of the bench. So bringing in a guy with experience to come and coach and lead this team, we're pretty excited. But at the same time, as long as everybody can stay healthy, this is not a one-horse team anymore like it was a couple of years ago with Kevin Love. So when he got hurt, everything fell apart. So we're not saying the P word yet, playoffs, but we like how it looks.
And Tones, you dealt with Thibodeau how many years in Chicago, and how do you feel about that pickup for Minnesota? I think it's a great one.
I mean, there's two sides to the coins on this when it comes to Tom Thibodeau. Okay, one of the things that really was a really big boon for Thibodeau and the Bulls was that he was a really, really good defensive coach. He you knew what you were getting with Tom, and that was a really good defensive set and a really good defensive scheme. The problem with Tom is that he takes so much from guys, and that's the reason why I'm nervous for a guy like Towns and for a guy like Wiggins, and even for a guy like Rubio with a couple of bad knees, is that Tom runs guys into the ground. Yeah. And he really, really puts a lot of minutes on his players throughout the regular season to try to win games. A meaningless, like game 45, a meaningless game in like early January. Playing all of his guys 40 to 45 minutes and not using his bench effectively and not using young guys effectively. I think that's something that you have to really, if you're a Minnesota fan, you're going to really have to look at how many minutes he is going to burn, playing with these guys. Because you look at as much as certain Bulls fans love Thibs, I look at the carnage that Thibs left when he did get fired. Yeah. You don't have Luol Deng anymore. Jimmy Butler is a former shell of himself. You have Joakim Noah, who is a former shell of himself, because he ran those guys into the ground. Wow. And you don't, as much as I love Thibs is a guy that he rubs guys the wrong way. Especially, I compare Thibs to like a better version of Scott Skiles. You can only have guys. You can only ride NBA players so long before they tune you out. Yeah. That's exactly what happened in Chicago. The guy.
Go ahead.
The guy that was in Thibs' corner for so long, Joakim Noah, when Joakim Noah, after last season, not this past season, but the season before, when he starts saying and sniping at the media and saying, we're just getting tired of Thibs, man. We're just getting tired of him. We're getting tired of the constant same message over and over and over again, and that wears on guys. But on the flip side of that, Minnesota desperately needs consistency, and Thibs gives you that. He gives you that defensive consistency, and I think it's a good pickup for them, but he has a shelf life, and you want to be able to make sure, and this is the reason why I'm worried about this, is that you made him president too. So he answers to himself, and that right there is a very big red flag for me. You've got to have somebody within that organization that can say, okay, maybe we don't. I disagree with you on this. You need to have conversation with that because you can't have a legitimate rule with an organization like that, especially with pieces like Wiggins and Towns.
And,
and I'm worried about that too. I'm always worried about that when a coach comes in and is given that tag, because you don't. You're exactly right. He answers to himself. The decisions are pretty much 90% his call. I'm not worried about the players getting ran into the ground, because even though he didn't play that much with Kevin Garnett here the last 2 seasons back as almost like a team cheerleader, he runs those guys into the ground. I was reading some stories about him yelling and swearing at Towns during practice to hustle. This is a practice. I'm about to get in Allen Iverson mode. We're not talking about a game. We're talking about practice, not about the game. Practice. So I think the team will respond well to his sort of chaotic style of play. Hopefully, he can maybe tone it down a little bit because the guys are young. But like I said, we're excited that somebody was interested in the job.
And
that's
I think
step one for us.
And I think Daryl and I are excited about the Greek Freak and a new stadium in Milwaukee.
Well, it's kind of off the taxpayers' backs. Just to throw that out there. I'm not going to lie.
Aren't all stadiums off taxpayers' backs?
A couple of them aren't. Especially the one in L.A. That's not off the backs of the taxpayers. I'm just saying. But the Greek Freak. You want to talk about a guy that has unlimited ceiling. I mean, that guy is phenomenal. A phenomenal offensive talent. What he can do with the basketball, 30 feet away from the basket, being able to run an offense. You can run an offense through him, and that is scary. I mean, him and Anthony Davis are 1A and 1B to me when it comes to young talent that are phenomenal in this league 2 to 3 years in. And the Bucks got him for legitimately cheap. And that's the reason why if I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I'm ridiculously excited for what he can bring to the table the next couple of years.
Well, I was going to say, based upon the economy in Greece, I think you would have worked for bread and water.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
But it's so amazing to see that, and as you mentioned, with the talent that he is, but the diversity within his talent. It's not like, he's just a great center or just a great, forward, or just they've moved him to a point guard position, a guy that they drafted to start at the number 5 spot again, to take that center role, and now all of a sudden it's, hey, the offense is moving through you. We're putting the ball in your hands, and you can make it happen. And the fact that, 5 triple-doubles in the final 6 weeks of the season?
Ridiculous. It is ridiculous. If you had him in fantasy basketball the last half of the year, you were very happy. You were a very smart individual.
And the fact that these were, obviously meaningless games that he could have just been like, yeah, don't care. He could have walked out and just thrown up a 3 and said someone else will rebound it. The thing that probably, and from a Milwaukee standpoint, going into the year, you had a lot more optimism thinking that Greg Monroe would play a much bigger role. And he didn't really seem to play that.
No,
it never seemed to click. And even towards the end of the year, he was the one coming off the bench.
Yeah. And how about Middleton? Middleton really stepped it up too later in the year, and Jabari Parker played well too. That's a great way to end a year. For a season you don't make the playoffs, and you're going to get a decent draft pick too. It's a great way to end with those 3 guys playing as well as they did.
And you need those 3 guys to play well, because those 3 guys are your future for that Milwaukee team, especially with that new stadium coming in. There's a lot of buzz in Milwaukee about how good that team can be in the next couple of years. It's the complete opposite version of what's happened in Chicago.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, and that's part of it too, is when we look at the conferences, even though Milwaukee won't really be able to contend with the LeBron crew in Cleveland, when you still look at the rest of the East, the teams that are in that top 3, or the next 3 after Cleveland, the Bucks can easily be within that mix. Maybe not, number 2 or number 3, but if they're sitting there in that 4-5 range, that's a heck of an improvement, not just for the organization, but when you start looking at the longer-term goal of what other teams really are there in the East that could contend, and if they have this young core together, that could carry for a good 3-4 seasons.
Yeah, the East is kind of a joke right now, to be honest with you.
But that's
I don't think it's not necessarily I don't think it's not necessarily a joke, though. I think the top 3 teams in the West are so good, because once you go past those top 3 teams in the West, you go to the Clippers. After that,
it falls off.
That's pretty much a joke out there.
Well, yeah, you look at Dallas, Memphis. Come on.
But I mean, it's a very interesting point that you're making on that. Again, you have such superstar level at that top, and then just such a fall from, the gap between, say, the 3 or 4 team down to the 6 team. But when you
I think and it's a legitimate argument. You look at the East right now, and
as a whole,
I think you look at the East top to bottom, 1 through 8. It's actually, with respect to the top 3 teams in the West, you look at the East. Those teams are really, really good basketball teams. And you look at a team like Toronto. You look at Boston, another team that is very good, has a really, really good coach in Brad Stevens.
Stud.
They have a lot of opportunity this offseason to really improve that team and use those chips that they have, especially with the Brooklyn pick, to really find somebody that can be a potential scorer for them. So I don't knock the East for not the East is not as bad as people make it out to be, but it's just convenient that they want to make it out to be like the East is so terrible. But compared to the top 3 teams in the West, yes, the East is terrible. But the other 5 teams in the West and also the teams below them, the East is not terrible. The East is actually very good.
Right. The light is shining brightest on those 3 in the West again, who are hovering right around that 70 win mark. I mean, the 73 from Golden State. I believe San Antonio hit 70 wins, did they not?
69, I believe, 69? Wasn't it?
69.
They
Bourne's favorite.
But I mean, they were again, a stretch of those 3 teams, and as you said, that kind of East overall. It's the fact that on a certain night, as you mentioned, with the younger group of a group in Boston that can go in to Cleveland and beat them 4 years ago, when right before the decision, if a team went into Cleveland then and beat the Cavaliers, beat LeBron at that point, it was a big deal.
It is.
But now it seems to be the East is essentially wherever LeBron James is, and then it's the rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think LeBron holds so much power over all those teams in the East that you kind of miss the fact that the teams that are below LeBron, below Cleveland, or below wherever he's going to go next, if he stays in Cleveland after the season, which I think that there are rumors out there that he might leave, and that's something that is I find very interesting to me, is that does he really want to take another hit and leave again? And leave Cleveland in a lurch after he basically said, "Oh, I'm a ride or die with Cleveland. Let's do this." And that's interesting to me, because I think he really feels like he made the wrong decision when it came to the decision to leave Miami to go to Cleveland. I think that when he looks at Miami, he sees a team that is really, really good.
Yeah.
Even with Dwayne Wade and his aging knees, that has a lot of pieces on the team. Even with Chris Bosh's health, that can really do something. That and you look at. Well, LeBron holds all the power. We all know that he holds all the power. Where he wants to go, that's where everybody's going to go to. Do you think that LeBron on that team, alongside Goran Dragic, and let's say Chris Bosh is seemingly healthy because they're not going to be able to afford all 4 of those guys alongside Dwayne Wade, do you think LeBron would be happier having Goran Dragic on that team, or would be happier having a Kyrie Irving type of player? I think he'd be happier having Goran Dragic. Kyrie Irving and LeBron James, I just feel like they don't mesh as well as everybody thought that they would match.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. NBA is one of those where, watching that, it's you got to have guys who can deal with each other's ego. And I think NBA is that way. I mean, because in football you can have an ego, but there's other guys on the football field. Baseball, same way. But basketball, there's only 5 of you on a court at once. Your ego can't take over, and I think that's my problem with the NBA is and putting players together. You got to have someone who can deal with LeBron's ego on that team, and I think Dragic would be better to deal with that ego because Kyrie thinks he's a a top-line point guard, so he's going to have that ego as well.
Well, you have a lot of egos on that team for the Cavs. You have Kevin Love, who has an ego. Bordeaux knows about this ego all too well. Kevin Love. Kevin Love likes Kevin Love.
Yeah.
Kevin Love is Kevin Love's biggest fan. Yeah. I mean, he's got his autographs, his jersey, memorabilia. Kevin Love loves Kevin Love.
Does Kevin Love?
You love that?
Does he love himself so much that he has his own jersey hanging over his bed?
Exactly.
Dropping dimes.
Dropping dimes.
He got himself a fat head of himself for his birthday.
But I mean
unbelievable.
That's the thing we talk about. But hey, guys, we'll this is kind of our NFL mock draft one, kind of to get our feet wet with this podcast thing. Disagree to disagree. But next time we talk, the Twins will still be under 500. Born, sorry to say it. But
that's the word.
That's the word.
So are the Brewers.
And the Brewers will be under 500. But Tonez, what's that team we both like? They're doing pretty damn good right now.
That would be the Chicago Cubs, and they are winning right now 8-1. I think if they won tonight, I'm not entirely sure, but they're playing very good baseball. Everybody is kind of chipping in, especially after the Schwarber loss.
Yeah,
a lot of people were kind of
which is one I think they could afford. I think a Schwarber loss.
Oh yeah,
he was the one player that got hurt that I'm like, okay, well they'll still be fine. They got Hayward, they got Fowler, they got Soler, they got Caesar. I mean, I think they're okay without Schwarber in the lineup. To be honest with you, he's bad.
They're going to miss the power production.
I agree, but in essence, they will be fine because you do have the top end of that lineup. That is is a murderer's row. And not only that, one of the things that before we end this thing here is it's something that has popped up with a lot of Cubs games this season is the Cubs' ability on the offensive end to put pressure on pitchers, and pitchers are leaving games sooner than expected. You're looking at pitchers batters taking pitches, in sequences of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pitch sequences and walking. And a walk rate that's ridiculous right now. I think Fangraphs had their walk rate a second all-time right now, owing to the Detroit Tigers like 25 years ago. Yeah. So it's a big deal what the Cubs are doing right now. We're just, it's early in the season, but it's definitely been fun to watch. That's for sure. It is, and I think being lifelong Cubs fans that we are, it's one of those things where you're like, man, I'm excited, and you don't want to jump the gun on anything, but man, it's looking good this year.
Definitely, it's been fun to watch, and hopefully it continues throughout the year, and we'll see what happens.
Well, guys, any final thoughts from the NFL mock draft special?
We all hate the Packers, and that makes me happy.
Final thoughts. I think that we're going to see a draft next week that is going to be a lot more intriguing than previous drafts, to be honest with you, because of so much movement over the past couple of weeks with a lot of draft picks that could be switching, and that's. I'm actually going to tune in. I kind of be honest with you, I wasn't really thinking about the draft. I'm more thinking about the Cubs and the Hawks right now, and what the Hawks are going to try to get out of their hole with St. Louis, and that's kind of switched me over to kind of think about what's going to happen with the draft.
I think the thing I take away from this when we sit down and actually kind of analyze it as a group is the so-called sexy skill picks. I don't think there are enough star power caliber players that a lot of the picks that will be seen in this draft, the ones that will actually pan out, will be the ones who are some of those unsexy picks that are going to be the guys who are working in the trenches or, again, either on the line or just kind of those serviceable roles. And I have a hard time seeing some of those skill guys actually panning out to be the stars that you would expect a number one player to be.
All right. I like it.
Yeah, and my final thoughts is talk about unsexy, and all I can think about is I got to guarantee Bortles sitting in a goddamn beanbag chair right now with a goddamn wife beater on. That's all I can picture. We're talking about unsexy. We talk about unsexy.
You couldn't be more wrong. I don't even own a beanbag chair.
It's just a wife beater. There's nothing on underneath but like below the belt. It's just a wife beater.
Laundry day. What can I say?
And a bag of
It's a
Cheetos
true
under
statement.
one
When
arm.
laundry day comes, you really just don't give a hell. You don't give a hell.
That's the only reason Bourne got married is someone to do his laundry, cook, clean. That's the only reason he got married.
You know, the funny thing is, true story, I do most of the cleaning and all the laundry here. The only reason I got married was for the tax breaks.
Well, you better have a kid so you can have no more tax breaks.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure and see if that tax break is worth it, But we like to go to Vegas every year, and people shouldn't bring their kids to Vegas, but they do, and it pisses me off because they don't belong there. You're supposed to drink, gamble, and look at hookers. You can't. The kids ruin the vibe.
Las Vegas is adult Disney World, and make it stay adult Disney World. Make it stay adult Disney World.
I won $400 on a Caddyshack slot machine like 2 days after they installed it in one of the casinos there. God, I couldn't have been happier. That gopher was dancing his ass off.
Love it.
Why don't you just ask one of the hookers how much they charge for an hour of babysitting?
Because it's not worth it. Trust me, I may have already asked about that. Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
This is going to be a fun podcast.
All right, guys. Hey,
fun.
until next time here on Disagree to Disagree, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you again coming up here within the week, and we'll get together and we'll talk more. But we got to figure out what to talk about. Obviously, without the draft coming up, we have nothing.
Hookers.